Hello class. This speech is about parole and its effects on overcrowding. With so much crime going on in the world today, it is very unnecessary to use expensive prison space to house inmates who are non-violent or otherwise eligible for parole. Housing too many people in a prison facility can actually hurt the institution more than it can help them. With many facilities around the world having fewer workers to oversee a fast-growing inmate population, many other offenders with less offense crime should be granted parole to avoid overcrowding in the prison system. The United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and Georgia has the fourth highest rate of adults behind bars in the country. While the U.S. only represents around 5% of the world's population, 1/4 of the entire world's inmates are incarcerated in the United States. This also places Georgia near the top of the list for incarcerations worldwide. One of every 70 adult Georgians are in jail, compared to the national rate of 1 in 100, which was taken from the governor's 2011 report of special counsel. In today's society, crimes are being committed by individuals on a regular basis, which is causing the prison system to become overcrowded. With the number of inmates growing rapidly, this can cause overall pressure on the correctional facility as a whole. Prison overcrowding has many negative effects upon inmates. Research has shown that prison overcrowding creates competition for limited resources, aggression, higher rates of illness, and the likelihood of recidivism, and higher suicide rates. Although there are many effects which can contribute to overcrowding, parole is one of the most influential alternatives to avoid the problem this may cause. By placing an inmate on parole, it does not mean that the system is setting them free. It is only an alternative which can help monitor them while releasing an individual from confinement. This topic is very important to me because I have several family members and friends that are locked away in overcrowded prisons for non-violent crime, while many murderers and child molesters are free on the streets. In order to understand why overcrowding can be a problem with the prison system, we must first understand what parole is and why it can be an alternative to incarceration. According to the Pennsylvania State Board, parole is the release of an inmate from prison prior to his or her sentence's maximum date, but after the minimum sentence date, to continue serving the balance of the sentence under supervision in the community. Parole is a conditional release that requires parolees to abide by rules that do not apply to other members of society. Before an individual inmate can be released from the prison system, their parole must be granted by the Board of Paroles and Pardons. Studies into the effects of overcrowding on inmates also means that we must define overcrowding and describe how the basic effects which can cause problems within the system. Crowding research has focused mainly on spatial density and social density of crowding. Spatial density is defined as the amount of space available per person in a particular housing unit. Social density is defined as the number of individuals who are sharing a housing unit and are considered the factor which contributes most of the adverse effects of crowding. It has also been suggested that density alone does not explain the total effects of crowding. It has been found that may lessen or heighten the impact of density, such as personal control in the physical environment itself. Crowding is only indirectly related to mere members or density of people. It is normal for inmates to feel crowded in the presence of few people or not crowded in the company of many. As these elements may seem awkward, they appear to be frustrating in the achievement of some purposes because of the presence of others. The issue of overcrowding is not a problem that has recently come into existence. Actually, overcrowding in the prison system has been one of the largest problems that the administrators of American prisons in state, local, and federal prisons have been faced with for over 30 years. Starting with a massive influx of prisoners in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. prison populations began to grow vastly. Many prison systems increased to the point that problems arose in regards to keeping track of the inmates which were being housed in the facilities. As the prison system began to grow, they began to see a large number of negative actions occurring as a result. When an institution is running over the maximum capacity, it's very hard for those incarcerated to receive adequate inmate care and seek treatment on their health issues. Some of the health issues that may arise from overcrowding include issues in mental health, behaviors, and inmate moral, high blood pressure, and lack of care for inmates with extreme disabilities. In a correctional facility, crowded conditions are chronic. People who are prone to antisocial behavior are gathered, and there is an absence of personal control, and idleness and boredom can be prevalent. Some of the effects of overcrowding in the prison system include a limitation on the available resources the inmates have, behavioral problems among inmates, and the inability of the institution to meet the increased demands for more space and the resulting harm which can be done to the inmates. With a correctional facility being overcrowded, many inmates will not have the opportunity to take advantage of some of the available resources that are given to them. The opportunities to participate in self-improvement and rehabilitative programs such as academic, employment, and vocational training are affected. A lack of work or work opportunities to the inmates can leave them with the idle time on their hands, often resulting in discontent and disruptive behavior. A lack of resources for inmates can include anything that the inmate may need to use, which includes washroom availability, library books, television, lounge seating, and the use of recreational materials. Without having available resources, many inmates may become frustrated or unpleasant when being denied or limited to resources, and competition and conflict over utilizing limited resources can lead to aggression and violence. Another effect of overcrowding in the prison system, which can be avoided by the use of parole, is disruptive behavior by the individual inmate. Crowding can create stress, which can also have a negative effect on any problem that the inmate may already be having. Idleness, fear, the inability to maintain personal identity, or to turn off unwanted interactions and simulations all contribute to stress from overcrowding. Some inmates may also choose to deal with the issue on overcrowding differently and may often turn to options which are not healthy for them. Social interactions and relations have been considered one of the most important effects of prison overcrowding. When institutions become overcrowded, inmates are usually more aggressive and are in competition for resources. They are less cooperative and are more withdrawn socially. In crowded situations, individuals can be perceived as less attractive or interesting. The last effect that can be caused by overcrowding is the prison's inability to meet the increased demands for more space and resulting harm that it can cause to the individual inmates. As an attempt to cope with the limited space as a result of overcrowding, there has been a strong tendency to misclassify offenders. To a certain extent, overcrowding has resulted in offenders being classified on the basis of the space rather than the security level and programs that are more suitable to the offender. Although the classification process for offenders is standardized, it has not been uncommon to find inmates classified as medium security being incarcerated in maximum security institutions, while other inmates who were in medium security may have been candidates for maximum security institutions. The effects of overcrowding and misclassification create a vicious cycle for the inmate. It begins with overcrowding, then the assignment to an appropriate facility and programs, followed by inmate stress reactions to the lack of services, no movement or progress within the system, being labeled a failure to adjust, no parole release, rule infractions. Excuse me, class. The effects of overcrowding and misclassification creates a vicious cycle for the programs, followed by inmate stress reactions to the lack of services, no movement, or progress within the system. Being labeled a failure to adjust, no parole release, rule infractions to regressive transfer. In a landmark decision in May 2011, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that overcrowding in California prisons resulted in cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in the case of Brown versus Platter, 2011. Then the courts required the state to reduce its prison overcrowding to 137.5% of design capacity within 2 years. The population reduction order is the result of lengthy litigation. The matter was initiated when federal judges who oversaw California's prison, medical, and mental care health systems ordered that a 3-judge court be convened to consider placing limits on California prison population. The judges found that overcrowding is the main cause of the system's inability to provide competent and timely health care for prisoners. The judges also found evidence that by reducing the prison population, it was the only way to address the current problem. Also, during the litigation process, the state implemented realignment policies to increase the prison system's capacity in many different ways, such as diverting some felons to county jail or home detention, reducing revocations of probation and parole, and by granting some prisoners with additional sentence credits. As of spring 2014, the state has reduced the prison population significantly, but they still have not reached the population reduction benchmark thus far. Overcrowding can also become an issue when the sentencing courts are having a major communication barrier with correctional agencies. When the courts hand down a sentence on an offender, the judge rarely states a clear purpose for the sentence or elaborates on the process by which corrections is supposed to achieve it. Data shows that most individuals sentenced to prison are drug and property offenders, which are receiving a longer amount of time than other offenders with more serious crimes. As incarceration rates continue to rise, parole has become a critical mechanism for controlling the prison population. For example, in the 1990s, a large number of Alabama prisoners were paroled, but within the past decade, parole grants have been on a standstill even as prison overcrowding reached its crisis proportions. The Attorney General's office in Alabama opposes nearly all parole grants and has even pressured parole boards members into rescinding parole determinations. Stringent parole conditions and a lack of support for those